Hello there. Another instalment of famous witches. This one was coined Britain's most famous witch in the 1950s. It all started because of a witchcraft repeal of an act from the 1700s. In 1951, the Witchcraft Repeal Act meant that witches, once self-confessed, cannot be persecuted for such a crime, although such a law under the Act was never really enforced for some time after the 17 and 1800s. Nonetheless, witches stayed in the shadows. We find it is the best place for us. This witch, however, brave, intrepid, perhaps one who liked the limelight, was born as Sybil Fawcett on the 22nd of February 1923 on Stoke-on-Trent. There born into a family who she had claimed had dealings in witchcraft since the 16th century. She was raised with a deep and profound wonder for Oriental mysticism, laid down by stories by her father, who also taught her herbalism. Her grandmother equally taught her palmistry and astrology, which apparently was taught by her mother. Once married, she took the name Sybil Leek. Sybil Leek has done a lot for witchcraft. In many ways, she was ahead of her time, and for this reason, perhaps, was treated unfairly by many. But it is safe to say she broke ground for many witches to follow in her footsteps. In some ways, she became a martyr to her own story. Let us look into Sybil Leek. As I have said, Sybil Leek, born the 22nd of February 1923, was Sybil Fawcett. However, her true story that we know of came into being when she married, became an antiques dealer, and, as her own words, a housewife. But above all these, most well known, she was a witch, a working witch at that. She came out as a self-confessed witch around 1951, when the Act was repealed. By such a time, she was living in Burley, a village within the New Forest, which to this day now is well known for its witchcraft activity. At the time, and I still think even now, there are 7 independent covens working within the New Forest, probably more. The 7 at the time had 13 witches. One coven was founded by Sybil Leek. She belonged to a coven that was reputed to be 700 years old at the time. Within this coven she was made a blood sister, which is one of the highest honours given to a member of such a coven of witches. It is where her blood and the blood of the others, the higher members of the coven, are mixed together, like a blood oath or pact. Scores of people, journalists from everywhere, came to the village of Burley to hear of this self-confessed witch who had come out of hiding almost. Her image did not disappoint. Rather eccentric to a nature was this rather comely-looking woman, with a long black cape often worn, and a jackdaw sat upon her shoulder. The jackdaw's name was Mr. Hotfoot Jackson. He was Sybil's familiar, and the two of them clearly shared a very close bond. Although Sybil spoke of her knowledge of all forms of the craft, she did not deal with anything maleficent. It did not do her spirit well, and she did not endeavour or pursue such things. Instead, she plied her craft in the ways of healing and walk cunning, reading and astrology and psychic connections, like most witches do. There were many interviews and many articles written on her, many a chat show she found herself on. To some, and perhaps even to this day, Sybil Leek was known as something as a joke or perhaps a fraud. However, as I say, I believe she was ahead of her time. She was incredibly fond of the work she did, and there was passion in it. She was also entangled in environmental acts and moral persuasions, which for the time not many people were. It was said that she worked with the British government. However, you must take this with a pinch of salt. Of course, almost every single occultist, witch and sorcerer around the 1920s to the 1950s was reputed to work with the British government in the war effort. It is said that her job was writing false horoscopes and charts which would help dupe Germans who believed in them. It was around 1956 where Sybil came into some dispute with her landlord. The landlord was apparently a Christian, God-fearing man and asked Sybil to renounce witchcraft, otherwise he will not continue her lease to the house from which she rent in the village. Naturally, Sybil told him where to stick it, and then had her eye turned to a further site. She moved to Florida, in America. But Sybil did not retreat. She did not abandon or run away. On the contrary, there people were climbing over themselves to have her in meetings and interviews. She rubbed shoulders with the famous people of the time. She also had written 60 books on the occult, on witchcraft, throughout the rest of her life in America. She passed at the age of 65 in 1982 in Florida. There she left 2 sons, by which time fully grown. Her ashes were taken back to England. This individual, this enigmatic individual, who perhaps took the opportunity where she saw a world that was changing. She stepped into a limelight. Now many believe that perhaps she enjoyed it. Many believed that it was the bravado. I personally do not. I think she knew exactly what she was doing. She was becoming history. For what she did, what she had done, she had paved the way. She had worked as inspiration to many and set a standard where common folk may not fear witchcraft. She had sped up the very long, very arduous rolling of a ball, which the inevitable conclusion is acceptance, not just of creed or race or religion, but those who exist perhaps in between each of those. those who are not always even accepted by their own kin, witches. So I doff my cap to Sybil Leek, Britain's most famous witch. There she helped her friend name a shop, still known to this day and operating as a coven of witches. And the village of Burley is a veritable mecca for witches. Have a blessed day.